Oh, so is that recording? Yes, it is. So I didn't actually manage to... Okay. So, hello and welcome to my new YouTube video. Okay, this time it's going to be about the portrayal of Dyspraxcia on the most recent series of Doctor Who. Now, start off with the good things. Good things are that it was portrayed in the first place, though further into the video you'll find out that I don't really think that's enough. Second is that it was a non-white character who had dyspraxia, Ryan, and I think that's important because very often it's always white people that have a disability in a disability in a portrayal of disability in film or TV and stage. So I think that's an issue in itself, because it means that people who are ignorant about disability, who don't know a lot about disability, because they don't necessarily have it in their lives or have anyone in their lives who has a disability, will potentially think that disability is only a thing for white people, and to be honest, you'd be surprised how some people think, so I think that is a possibility. Third thing I think was good was that he was impatient with the blind girl in, I can't remember what episode it was, but the one in sort of Norway in the forest. That was quite interesting, because I think that to have had them both get on instantly potentially would have assumed that all disabled people get on, and it would have been interesting to have a bit more of that actually as well. On the other hand, it would have been a bit more interesting to have them perhaps him tell her he's dyspraxic, because he didn't, and I think that might have been it could have been potentially an interesting conversation actually that they could have done, because it might have been because he was trying to distract her from being scared of this monster, wasn't he, that was supposedly there. That was part of his character's job in that episode, if I remember rightly, and that would have been kind of an interesting discussion to have. So I'm kind of on the fence about that one actually. I'm sort of two thinking in two ways. But I think the bad things about it were that it was like only really widely done in the first episode when he was having trouble learning to ride his bike. It took me a long time to learn to ride a bike as well, because obviously I'm dyspraxic myself, so that's why I'm doing this video, because I'm doing my views on the portrayal of dyspraxia in Doctor Who as a dyspraxic person, just one of the many. But yeah, that was just the general lack of it being mentioned or looked at after that episode, because I know he had confidence issues, which can be caused by dyspraxia. I have that a bit, but actually anyone can have that, so I think that's a little bit. That's an important thing, but they also needed to do more visual things as well, like. And sometimes he did have loads of confidence as well, didn't he? Like that line in, I think it was the Rosa episode, "I'll go and pour the tea." Like, you know, for me, that's quite a scary thing to be doing, to be working with hot food or hot liquids. Excuse me. But yeah, that yeah, that's, sorry about the sneeze, but yeah, that's a big issue, because I think for probably quite a lot of dyspraxic people that's a problem and an issue. And for him to be so sort of confident with it, I know that he was awestruck by Rosa Parks, but I still think there needed to be something in there. Maybe he could have dropped something, because that, I drop things quite a lot. Or maybe he wouldn't have been so confident. Maybe he could have asked for some help. Maybe in that episode in the 60s, because it was set in the 60s, obviously, maybe we could have had some... I mean, I'm not sure when Dyspraxia was discovered. Maybe we could have had some attitudes towards his disability and a comparison between now and then. Perhaps that would have been interesting as well. I know it was focused on race, but I don't see why that means that we could look at other issues as well. Because I think race is obviously the big important one in that episode, but we could have looked at some others as well. A little bit, possibly. I don't know if that's right or not, but... yeah, and I think that there's just a lot of stuff, really, because there's so much that they could have done with it in there, like writing. Like, my handwriting's a big problem for me, and they didn't do anything about that. They didn't do... There's just a lot of stuff that they didn't do that they really could have done, like the tremor. I have a tremor that's partly related to my dyspraxia and partly related to my epilepsy medication. And they possibly could have done that. And I'd have been interested... I'd kind of like there to be other dyspraxic characters, or characters with other disabilities in there when they go back to Sheffield maybe another time, because in my experience at least, I don't know about anyone else watching this video, but in my experience at least, when you have a disability you tend to know quite a few other disabled people, but maybe that's just my experience, or just an experience of a certain number of disabled people, I'm not sure. But that would be an interesting thing to put in, I think. And I think that the fact that they just mentioned it in passing references after the first episode is a big problem, because they had this wonderful opportunity to really educate people and really make people think, oh look, that happens there, so that's why. Yes, this is me, the roller coaster ride of being dyspraxic, of that sort of thing, of a good day, bad day sort of thing. They really had an opportunity to do quite a lot with that, and I think that it's a little bit of a problem that they didn't do that, because ultimately that's what's needed, because dyspraxia has never been, or is extremely rarely portrayed on television and film and theatre, so I think there's a need for it to be done, and I think there's a need for it to be done better, and I think Doctor Who should have done that and in this series, and I think should do that in future, because otherwise, you know, it's all very well doing it. That's important that they've done it, but the way in which you portray something is also important, is actually possibly more important, because it's all very well doing it, but if you only leave people with one particular problem created by that disability, dyspraxia in this case, then that's what people are going to think, because a lot of people don't necessarily think outside the box, so to speak. So that's a problem, and I think it's a problem that will only get worse if they don't try and push the boundaries a bit more of the dyspraxia portrayal. Hopefully that they will in the next series. And I also would like to, if personally as well, I think it should have been a dyspraxic, should be a dyspraxic actor. I don't know if the actor who plays him is or not. I've no idea, but personally I think they should be, because I think ultimately that means that, like, so I've done some acting, so like when you're doing quite an emotional scene, you might go back on and think, oh, that was a bad thing that happened to me, so I'll go back on that, how do I feel this, and then put that into the scene, or this made me angry, or this made me sad, this made me happy, and put that into a scene to make your acting better. That's a technique that you do in acting, and I think obviously if you're dyspraxic and there's something that happens, there's a scene in the show that involves your dyspraxia for whatever reason, then you go back to something in your past that happened recently or a long time ago and think, yes, that's what it felt like, so I'll put that in and do some acting, and then it makes it really good. And I think the movement as well, like, it would be very, very hard. Like, I have sort of slight movement issues, not massively so, but a bit. So some of the way I move, it's kind of a bit different to someone who doesn't have dyspraxia. So it's quite hard for someone who doesn't have dyspraxia to do that, I think, even if they're a really superb actor. And I think he is a good actor, but I just think if he's not dyspraxic, I think they should have hired a dyspraxic actor, but that's just me. Obviously, there's a few other people that think that as well, but that's not everyone has to think that way. But I'd like to see disabled actors being hired more to play disabled people generally. I've done a video on that, so I've done a video on disability portrayal in general, and there's a what is dyspraxia one I've done that I'm going to link into the description, and there's a couple of others done by there's one done by Annie Elaney, and that I'm going to link into the video description as well, about sort of disability representation and portrayal. So yeah, that's my video. I hope you liked it. Right, this time.